Disney is increasingly in trouble. ABC News, owned by Disney, is increasingly in trouble. I'll tell you, ABC News did not need this happening at this particular point. They didn't need a lawsuit with Donald Trump. They didn't need him going after them for defamation or slander or whatever you want to call it when you call people names like that over and over again on television. They do not need this right now because they're in the midst of a battle, frankly, for their existence. Certainly at ABC. I mean, Bob Iger told us last summer, he's the CEO of Disney, that he was looking to sell ABC and ESPN and some others. Funny enough, I was just looking at the Wall Street Journal today, and there's a front page story about how the ESPN boss is trying to remake the network. Why? Because you know what? Everybody's over here streaming. Everybody's doing this. Quick reminder, make sure you subscribe. This is the future. And so when you got these big cumbersome networks like ABC News or even ESPN, which you'd think, oh, no brainer, it's sports, it's going to do great. Well, guess what? It's not doing great. And so Bob Iger is trying to fix all this. And he's trying to fix it, if you ask me, with two hands tied behind his back because of the staff he has, whether you're talking about George Stephanopoulos and the staff at, what is it called, This Week on Sunday over there at ABC. George, by the way, used to work for, don't forget, Hillary Clinton. I see some of you are messaging about this. Actually, Bill Clinton. So he's like in tight with the Clintons, and he's got his obvious political bias that is quite on display. But they didn't need this. Disney didn't need this at a time like this because they are fighting basically for control of the company. Bob Iger, he's the CEO. He's trying to do what he can, right? He brought a new CFO in. Let's look at these. Let's get rid of ABC. Let's get rid of The View. I mean, they can't get rid of it fast enough. Let's sell it. My sources have told me that there have been meetings between Nexstar Communications and ABC News. So maybe they pick it up. Maybe they get the whole ABC network. Good luck. I actually think that you're going to see a lot of change if that happens. But it's, unfortunately for anybody who buys it, kind of a dying medium. Now, you can still make money on it, so they're still willing to take that chance, obviously. And I think a lot of private equity shops will look at this, and a lot, Nexstar, maybe some other communication companies, they'll look at it, and they'll find a way to squeeze profits out, which means, Georgie, you may not have such a big salary. Whoopee, you may not have such a big salary. You may not have a job. We'll see, because again, this medium is changing. But the other thing that just happened today is I think they can't get out of their own way because of their staff, whether it be George, whether it be Whoopi, or whether it be their new directors at Star Wars. George Lucas just came out today. He's the big Star Wars guy, right? And he is defending Bob Iger as Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, is trying to make sure that Nelson Peltz, the billionaire investor who's trying to tell Disney, this is not really working. You guys ought to go back to the well and try and just actually make good stories and good movies and entertain people and maybe do a few less sequels and maybe do a little less PC nonsense. Anyway, George Lucas came out and said, creating magic is not for amateurs. That's a direct dig at the billionaire investor, Nelson Peltz, who's trying to get some board seats and he's trying to, push his weight around. He's like, guys, just go back to making content. Well, you see, they can't really go back to just making good content. And the reason for that is they have become so indoctrinated with all of this PC nonsense that's affecting everything they do, especially when it comes to content. Case in point, Star Wars. That would be George Lucas's stuff. Star Wars is getting a new director. Well, they have a woman who's going to run the whole franchise, and she's a feminist woman, I guess of Palestinian descent from Canada. And she just hired this other woman, Leslie Hedgeland. Did I say that right? Anyway, I want you to take a look at her. She is LGBTQ, great and everything. But what's just interesting to me is that suddenly all of that is taking precedence over just the creation of good content, right? Why are we so distracted by sexuality and gender and all these things that really don't add up to necessarily creating just what the consumer wants to see? Here she is.
When I saw Frozen as a grown-ass woman, I cried through the entire movie. There was just something about the relationship between the sisters, the like de-villainization of the classic kind of fairy tale bad guy, the concept of true love being between two sisters and not a heterosexual relationship. Like it just destroyed me completely. And I thought, gosh, I would love to make something like this that is, for lack of a better term, Disney, meaning it's something that like my parents would have allowed me to see when I was younger as a queer person.
Gotcha.
But I would have been able to understand as a queer person. And I think I would have had a completely different life. And so I really was inspired by it and was like, God, I would love to make a story like this. And so when I was developing this original idea to pitch to Kathleen, I thought, well, it can't just be that. When you're pitching Star Wars, you have to pull from what, George was also interested in. Like, it can't just be like, well, I'm referencing, especially if you're going to set something, during the High Republic or end of High Republic into prequels, you don't have the Skywalker saga. Like, you can't reference a character that was created by George and or Filoni. Like, you have to create your own new characters.
Okay. All right. So
when I saw Frozen,
we know where she's going with this. Bless her. You know what? You do that all you want. The problem now is you're playing with shareholders' money. And shareholders are looking at it and they're like, wait a second. Oh my gosh. My Disney shares were worth $200 just 3 years ago, and now they're worth $100. So that's why people like Nelson Peltz, who are coming in saying, hey, Disney, do this, do that. That's why they have a leg to stand on, because Disney is so focused on what Leslie was talking about. And listen, I have no problem with it. You do you all day long. But when you becomes, and you as a minority are suddenly becoming the thrust of the entertainment division, and that's all you care about, and believe me, all the employees at Disney, that's what they care about, this PC nonsense, then you're going to have problems. And you know what? It's bad for shareholders. It's a big part of why I created 76 Research. It's a natural time to give a little plug here for 76. 76research.com. I encourage you to go over and check out the website, because this is what we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen. They're actually hurting you, the individual investor, with all the woke nonsense, because, okay, great. You know what? You want to hire a diverse workforce. Can you hire maybe diverse thinking people? I mean, great. Man, woman, you've got transgender, lesbian, gay, go on, do it all you want. But the problem is, if everybody thinks alike, and everyone does, if everyone's part of this woke nonsense, that's how I feel about it, you actually need people who think it's nonsense in order for this to ever work. But if you don't do that, then you're not going to have content that people actually want to see. So 76research.com, it's a research outlet for investors, everyday investors just like you, who are trying to get the truth, frankly. And look, it's not always easy to get.